November 1944. A lone Sherman tank rolls through the shattered streets of a German town. Its commander stands exposed in the turret hatch, scanning rubble that could hide a dozen anti-tank guns. The rest of his platoon is burning behind him. 3 Shermans destroyed in 90 seconds. The German 88mm positions have the range dialed in. Every approach is a kill zone. Standard doctrine says, withdraw, call for artillery, wait for infantry support. The commander does none of these things. He orders his driver forward, directly toward the guns. What happens in the next 7 minutes will be studied at Fort Knox for decades. The European theater in late 1944 is a war of attrition measured in steel and blood. Allied armor pushes east through France, Belgium, and into the German frontier. The Sherman tank is the backbone of this advance. Reliable, easy to produce, simple to maintain. American factories turn them out by the thousands, but the Sherman carries a terrible secret that every tanker knows and no one discusses openly. Against German heavy armor and anti-tank guns, it is outclassed in almost every measurable way. The 75mm gun cannot penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at combat ranges. The 76mm variant fares only slightly better. German 88mm guns, whether mounted on Tigers or in towed anti-tank positions, can destroy a Sherman at distances exceeding a mile. The Sherman's armor, adequate against earlier threats, offers little protection against high-velocity rounds designed to kill heavier prey. Tank crews develop dark humor to cope. They call the Sherman the Ronson after the cigarette lighter. Lights every time. They paint kill marks on their turrets and wonder privately if their own tank will earn a mark on some German gun barrel. The mathematics of armored warfare in 1944 favor the defender. A well-sighted 88mm gun with good camouflage and clear fields of fire can destroy multiple Shermans before being located. The gun is low, hard to spot, and can be repositioned between shots. The tank is tall, obvious, and must advance into the killing ground to engage. Doctrine compensates with numbers and coordination. Tanks advance in platoons with infantry support covered by artillery. Reconnaissance identifies threats. Engineers clear obstacles. The system works when every element functions. When the system breaks down, tankers die. In the towns and villages along the German border, the system breaks down constantly. Streets channel armor into predictable lanes. Buildings provide cover for anti-tank teams. Rubble blocks movement and creates choke points. Every intersection is a potential ambush. Every cellar window might conceal a Panzerfaust. The men who survive this environment share certain characteristics. They are aggressive but not reckless. They understand their machine's limitations and exploit its strengths. They make decisions faster than the enemy can react. And when the situation demands it, they do things that no manual would ever recommend. One such man is Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool, Texas-born, quiet in manner, methodical in combat. His crew calls him War Daddy, though never to his face. He commands a Sherman in the 3rd Armored Division, has been in continuous combat since Normandy, and has developed a reputation that spreads through the division like rumor. Pool does not fight like other tankers. He fights like a man who has calculated every variable and decided that audacity is the only mathematics that works. If this history matters to you, tap like and subscribe. Lafayette Pool grew up in the oil fields of East Texas during the Depression. His father worked rigs, rough labor that paid poorly, and demanded everything. Poole learned early that survival required understanding systems, knowing when to push and when to wait, reading the variables that others missed. He was small for his age, quick, observant. Teachers noted his aptitude for mechanical problems. He could disassemble a carburetor at 12, rebuild a transmission at 15. When war came, Poole enlisted without hesitation. He wanted armor. The tank appealed to his engineer's mind. A mobile system of engine, gun, and protection. A problem to be solved through understanding rather than brute force. He trained at Fort Knox, absorbed doctrine, and immediately began questioning it. Why did tanks always advance at the same intervals? Why did commanders button up when contact was imminent, sacrificing visibility for protection that might not save them anyway? His instructors noted his questions with mixed reactions. Some saw promise. Others saw a troublemaker who would get men killed. Poole graduated without distinction, shipped to England, and landed in France 6 days after D-Day. The bocage country of Normandy was a killing ground for armor. Hedgerows channeled tanks into ambush lanes. German anti-tank guns waited in prepared positions. Poole's platoon lost 3 tanks in the first week. He survived because he watched, learned, adapted. He noticed that German gunners targeted the lead tank first, then the rear, trapping the remainder. He began varying his position in the column, sometimes leading, sometimes trailing, never predictable. He noticed that German guns took several seconds to reload. A Sherman that kept moving during that window survived longer than one that stopped to return fire. He drilled his crew on rapid target acquisition. Driver, gunner, loader, working as a single organism. They could engage a target in under 4 seconds from spot to shot. Most crews took twice that long. By August, Poole had been promoted to platoon sergeant and given command of a tank he named In the Mood, after the Glenn Miller tune his gunner played on a portable phonograph between engagements. The tank became famous within the division, not for its paint scheme or its name, but for its survival rate. In the Mood kept coming back when other tanks did not. Poole's methods were unorthodox. He stood in the open hatch during combat, exposed from the chest up, scanning with binoculars while other commanders buttoned up inside their turrets. His crew thought he was mad until they realized his logic. The few seconds of warning that open hatch observation provided mattered more than the marginal protection of closed hatches. A commander who saw the threat first could react. A commander who saw nothing died surprised. He also closed distance faster than Doctrine recommended. Standard engagement ranges for Sherman versus anti-tank gun were 800 to 1,000 yards. Poole attacked at 400, sometimes 200. His reasoning was mathematical. At long range, the 88 millimeter had every advantage: accuracy, penetration, reload time. At close range, the variables shifted. The gun crew had less time to track. The Sherman's rate of fire mattered more, and at very close range, inside 100 yards, the geometry changed entirely. High-velocity guns designed for long-range work could not depress far enough to engage targets directly beneath them. No one taught this at Fort Knox. Poole figured it out by watching men die and refusing to die the same way. The problem facing Poole's platoon in November 1944 was not unique. It was the oldest problem in armored warfare: how to advance against prepared positions that outgun you. The town was typical of the German frontier. Stone buildings, narrow streets, a central square dominated by a church steeple that provided perfect observation. Intelligence reported at least three 88mm anti-tank guns covering the main approaches. Infantry had probed the perimeter and taken casualties. Artillery had fired preparatory missions with minimal effect. The guns were in hardened positions, protected by rubble and sandbags, with overlapping fields of fire. The battalion commander wanted the town cleared by nightfall. The main road beyond it led to a river crossing essential for the advance. Every hour of delay gave the Germans time to reinforce, mine the approaches, dig in deeper. Pool's platoon was assigned the western approach. 4 Shermans advancing down a street that offered no cover and terminated in the central square. The intelligence officer estimated 2 guns covering that axis. Pool studied the aerial photographs and disagreed. The angles were wrong. The positions marked on the map did not account for the dead ground created by a collapsed warehouse on the left side of the street. There was a 3rd gun somewhere, probably sighted to catch tanks that made it past the first 2. He said nothing during the briefing. Arguments with intelligence officers accomplished nothing. He simply noted the discrepancy and planned accordingly. The attack began at 1400 hours. Pool's platoon moved out in echelon formation. Tanks staggered to avoid presenting a clustered target. Pool's tank led. He stood in the open hatch, binoculars raised, scanning the rubble ahead. The first 88 fired at 600 yards. The round passed between Pool's tank and the one behind it, close enough to feel the shock wave. Pool did not stop. He accelerated. The second shot hit. The Sherman behind him, commanded by Sergeant Morrison, took the round through the front slope. The tank lurched, stopped, began to smoke. Pool saw the crew bail out. Morrison was not among them. The third shot came from a different angle. Pool had been right about the hidden gun. It was positioned in the rubble of the collapsed warehouse, covering the approach from a flanking position. The round hit the 3rd tank in the platoon, ammunition detonation. The Sherman erupted in a column of fire that rose 40 feet. 2 tanks destroyed in less than a minute. The 4th tank, at the rear of the formation, reversed and pulled behind a building. Its commander was screaming over the radio for Pool to withdraw. Pool did not withdraw. He ordered his driver forward. The gunner, Corporal Willis, asked for a target. Pool told him to wait. They were still too far. The 80s had the range. Engaging now was suicide. They had to get closer. The Sherman accelerated down the street, engine roaring, tracks throwing sparks against cobblestones. Rounds cracked past. One hit the turret, glanced off, screamed into the sky. Pool felt the impact through his boots, but kept scanning. At 300 yards, he spotted the first gun position. Muzzle flash had given it away. He called the target. Willis traversed. The 75mm barked. Miss, reload, fire again, hit. The gun position erupted in smoke and debris. But the flanking gun was still firing. Pool could not see it. The rubble concealed it perfectly. He had to get closer. He ordered the driver to turn left, directly toward the collapsed warehouse. The Sherman crashed through a low wall, crushed a wooden cart, and entered the rubble field. Pool dropped into the turret and closed the hatch, not for protection, for the periscope view that let him scan the immediate area without exposing himself. The flanking 88 fired again. The round passed so close that Pool heard it through the armor. Then he saw the muzzle flash. The gun was inside the warehouse, protected by fallen beams and masonry. A perfect position, invisible from the street, deadly to anything that approached. Pool's solution was not in any manual. He ordered the driver to ram. The Sherman accelerated across 30 yards of rubble and crashed into the warehouse structure. Beams collapsed. The tank's bow dug into debris. For a moment, Pool thought they were stuck. Then the tracks bit, and the tank lurched forward directly over the gun position. The 88 could not depress far enough to engage a target at contact distance. Pool heard the gun crew screaming in German. He ordered Willis to traverse left and fire high explosive into the rubble. The round detonated 10 feet from the tank. Debris showered the hull. Secondary explosions followed, ammunition in the gun position cooking off. Pool backed the tank out of the wreckage and scanned for the third gun. He found it 100 yards away, crew frantically trying to reposition. They had expected targets at range, not a Sherman closing to knife-fighting distance. Willis put 2 rounds into the position before they could fire. The western approach was clear. Pool radioed the battalion commander and reported 3 guns destroyed. He did not mention that half his platoon was burning behind him. The tank that had withdrawn rejoined him. Together, they pushed into the central square and engaged a machine gun nest that was pinning down infantry at the eastern edge of town. By nightfall, the town was cleared. The road to the river crossing was open. Pool's after-action report was characteristically brief. 3 enemy 88mm positions destroyed. 2 friendly tanks lost. Ammunition expended, 47 rounds 75mm, 800 rounds .30 caliber coaxial, 300 rounds .50 caliber. Fuel consumption, nominal. Vehicle damage, minor. The battalion commander read the report and called Pool to his command post. He asked for details. Pool provided them in the same flat tone he used for everything. He had identified a gap in the enemy's firing solution. He had exploited it. The math worked. The commander asked if he was insane. Pool said no. He had calculated the risk. The 88mm guns were optimized for engagement at range. At close distance, their advantages disappeared. A tank that closed fast enough could survive the approach and engage from inside the enemy's effective envelope. The commander asked if he would do it again. Pool said yes, if the situation required it. Word spread through the division. Pool's attack became legend before the week was out. Other tankers asked questions. How close did you get? How did you survive the approach? What made you think it would work? Pool answered each question with precision. No bravado, no embellishment, just geometry and timing. A few tried to replicate his tactics. Most failed. They had the courage, but not the patience. They saw the target and charged. Pool saw the target and calculated. The difference was everything. Lafayette Pool continued fighting until February 1945, when a German round finally caught in the mood outside Münster. The shell killed his loader and took Pool's right leg below the knee. He survived, evacuated to England, then home to Texas. By then, his record was extraordinary, credited with destroying or capturing over 250 enemy vehicles, 12 tanks, numerous armored cars and half-tracks, countless soft-skinned vehicles. His crew had survived when the statistical probability said they should not have. After the war, Pool returned to civilian life. He ran a garage, raised a family, rarely spoke of combat. When asked about his methods, he deflected. He had not done anything special. He had simply understood his machine and refused to fight on the enemy's terms. His tactics were studied at Fort Knox and incorporated into armored doctrine. The principle of closing distance against high-velocity anti-tank guns, exploiting the dead ground created by their limited depression, became standard training. Tankers learned what Pool had discovered through observation and mathematics. Sometimes survival meant doing what no manual recommended. Pool died in 1991. Quiet funeral, family, and a handful of old tankers who remembered. No speeches about heroism. He would not have wanted that. His legacy is not a statue or a memorial. It is a change in doctrine that saved lives for decades after. It is the understanding, taught at armor schools worldwide, that audacity and calculation are not opposites. They are partners. And when combined with commitment, they can change the outcome of a battle. The German gun crews that day never understood what hit them. Their radios carried fragments of panic transmissions. He is too close. We cannot depress. The rounds are passing over him. Then silence. That silence was the sound of mathematics overturning expectation, of one man who refused to accept that certain problems were unsolvable, who saw the variables everyone else saw and reached a different conclusion. Pool did not fight recklessly. He fought precisely. He accounted for every factor, reduced the problem to its elements, and acted when others hesitated. His defiance was not of authority, but of assumption. He proved that the geometry of survival was not fixed. It could be altered by a man who understood it and committed completely. That is the legacy of the quiet ones, the tankers who study their machines and see solutions where others see only death. They do not seek glory. They seek results. And in the cold algebra of armored warfare, results are the only measure that matters.